The ocean was a cruel mistress. She whispered to men with the promise of freedom, gold, and glory, then trapped them in an endless blue cage, where even their most human desires began to rot. For pirates, the scariest part of life at sea was not the cannonballs or hangings. It was the silence that came after the storm, the heavy, aching quiet of a ship full of men with nowhere to put their hunger. The title of this story, How Did Pirates Survive Without Sex?, was not just a curiosity. It was a window into the strangest torment of history's most lawless outlaws. Imagine this. 80 men crammed into a floating coffin of oak and tar. The air thick with sweat, salt, and unwashed bodies. The deck creaked with every wave. Rats scurried over boots. The food smelled like rot. The rum was watered down to keep them docile. And weeks became months without sight of a woman, without touch, without warmth. They were masters of the sea, but slaves to their own blood. Below deck, hammocks swung side by side, the fabric damp from the ocean's breath. A man could reach out in the dark and brush against another's shoulder, a reminder that the only human closeness available was the same sex pressed against you in a space barely large enough to breathe. Some joked, some prayed. Most just stared into the planks above them, letting the thrum of the waves drown out what their bodies screamed for. Pirates were creatures of contradiction. They defied kings and gods, but could not escape biology. Desire became a kind of madness on the open water, a fever they carried as surely as they carried cutlasses. They sang bawdy songs, not for humor, but to release tension that had nowhere else to go. Graffiti of naked women scratched into the wood with dull knives became shrines to memory. A breast, a curve, a name half remembered from a brothel in Havana. This was religion aboard a pirate ship. Every voyage became a slow burn of repression. And repression, history shows, always finds a crack to slip through. By the third month at sea, even the most disciplined crew turned restless. Fights broke out over petty things, a missing ration, a bad hand of dice, an insult muttered under breath. But beneath it all was the same pressure, the unspoken frustration of men trapped together too long. They joked about women in every port, but those jokes were ghosts. A pirate's diary found off Barbados captured their torment. We eat salt. We breathe salt. We dream salt. Even our blood feels dry. No woman's voice to wet the heart. That dryness was no poetry. It was madness. On ships where discipline meant survival, captains feared what silence could awaken. Their first rule was denial. The sea was a man's world, bound by loyalty and superstition. Women were banned, said to bring bad luck, but that myth hid truth. It was easier to forbid women than face what their absence created. From that isolation rose matelotage, bonds between sailors sharing treasure, provisions, and sometimes beds. Often born of need, sometimes of desire. Two men under moonlight might whisper of home, mothers, lovers lost to war. In that stillness, companionship turned to necessity. Some found solace, others sank into darkness. Coercion, abuse, and violence haunted the decks. Captains punished such acts harshly, yet most looked away. Shame was more dangerous than sin. Do not ask, do not tell was born on those decks long before modern armies. When voyages ended, restraint shattered. Ports like Nassau and Port Royal erupted in chaos. Men who had starved for touch drowned themselves in drink, gambling, and brothels. Prostitutes earned fortunes, while priests prayed for the damned. Disease soon followed, syphilis, pox, infection that devoured flesh and mind. Some pirates died screaming from the very freedom they had chased. Yet hunger always returned. In despair, some crossed darker lines. Records tell of bestial acts, a cook flogged for sin with a goat, the beast later eaten. Grim humor on a ship that knew no mercy. To stay sane, pirates mocked their pain. They sang crude songs, carved lewd figures, staged foul plays. Rum flowed like blood, turning grief into laughter, and mutiny into sleep. But rum's comfort was brief. One argument, one knife, and the sea claimed another body by dawn. Among them, rare women sailed in disguise, Anne Bonny, Mary Red. They sought not romance but survival. Some crews hailed them as equals, others as omens. Yet their presence stirred something dangerous. Amid brutality, men remembered tenderness. Beneath the tattoos and fear, pirates were not demons, but men desperate for connection, hiding longing behind songs and storms. Between verses of gunfire and gold, pirates always sang of women left behind, of kisses fading into salt. Alone beneath a vast sky, even the fiercest pirate could feel small. The sea was eternal, their desires fleeting. That longing reminded them they were still human. Their war was not just against empires, but against emptiness. They could rob kings and sink ships, but never escape themselves. Isolation pressed like the weight of the sky, and each man found his own way to fill the silence. Some prayed, others drank, many improvised. Desire became both taboo and necessity. The ocean had its own laws. What happened at sea stayed at sea. Historian Charles Johnson wrote that pirates made companions of their liking, bound by oath and affection. He was being polite. Those partnerships were the lifeline of pirate life, men sharing treasures, pain, and nights. Their union called matelotage blended loyalty with intimacy. When one partner died, the other inherited his share, a will signed in salt and blood. But companionship had shadows. The same closeness that bred affection could breed coercion. Younger sailors suffered in silence. Official punishment was hanging, unofficial punishment was denial. Captains feared scandal more than sin. Yet amid brutality, tenderness survived. Letters found on captured ships spoke of devotion. "Tell him I kept his knife by my heart," he sang until the mast fell. These were not monsters, but men starved for connection, fighting storms outside and within. When anchors dropped, repression exploded. Nassau, Tortuga, Port Royal, ports that pulsed like open wounds. Rum spilled, bodies tangled, laughter drowned in perfume and sweat. Pirates spent fortunes in a single night, buying the illusion of warmth. But the price was sickness. Syphilis, pox, and madness spread faster than wind. Some burned themselves with mercury, others swallowed poisons, begging for mercy. Many died not from battle, but from what they caught in a stranger's bed. Still, lust drove the pirate world. Brothels thrived, governors took bribes, and officials feigned blindness. Ports adjusted their rhythms, ships docking by night, women smuggled in secrecy, pleasure traded like currency. For many, this became ritual, months of restraint, 1 week of oblivion, then back to sea and silence. But for others, it went deeper. Rum became therapy, laughter became disguise, and beneath it all, the hunger never died. Rum dulled the ache and blurred the edges of sanity. Passed between hands, it became communion, a momentary cure for the ache of untouched hearts. Under its haze, rules dissolved. 2 men could share a blanket and call it drunkenness, and no one asked questions. Yet loneliness ran deeper than rum could reach. Women like Bonnie and Mary Red, disguised as men, joined crews for survival or defiance, their presence stirring both affection and danger. Records spoke of love unspoken, of loyalty too deep to name. But for every tender story, countless ended in tragedy. Men were hanged for desire, beaten for weakness, mocked for need. The sea forgave nothing but understood everything. Their songs told the truth better than history. Beneath crude laughter, their shanties mourned what they could never have: warmth, home, love. Beneath the myths of adventure lay despair. Pirates lived in a world where touch meant risk, and loneliness devoured them from within. They fought empires but lost to themselves. In the end, few saw 40. No wives, no families, just ocean and ghosts. They conquered waves, not their hunger. Even now, their echoes drift across the sea, men who traded everything for freedom, only to find the deepest prison was their own soul.